Yep. Good evening, everyone. So last session we discussed about how do we work with pipes, custom pipes and all. Now we are going to see how do we work with Angular services technically. So here the key point you need to first understand. Generally, can you tell me what is a service? So first point, what is a service? In computer programming, what is a service? What do you say? What is a service? Pipes example I just now shared. Just now I shared the pipes example, everyone. So tell me what is a service in computer programming? Any idea? So technically, the concept of service functionality which can be shared among across application. Okay. Anyone else? Anything? Actually, technically speaking, we call service. Service is a service is a predefined business logic. Technically speaking, service is a predefined business logic. That means it contains predefined logic. It is a predefined business logic which you can import, you can inject actually, which you can inject and implement in any component. Service is a predefined business logic which you can inject and implement in any component. Actually, service enables reusability, maintainability, testability, reusability, maintainability, and testability. These all things are enabled with services. We can reuse, we can easily maintain, and we can easily test. So the main concept is reusing the logic, maintaining the logic, and testing the logic. These are all. So it can perform all these basic things. So predefined business logic means it can have ready-made functions which you can implement and use them, right? That is the point. Now, can you name any services that you know in computer technologies? Any services that you know in computer technologies? Yes. So actually, your services, yeah. So generally, we have several services like CAPTCHA is a service. That means what is CAPTCHA? CAPTCHA is nothing but it is an artificial intelligence program. That artificial intelligence program is going to verify whether you are a human or a robot. Now, if anybody asks, do you know how to write code for CAPTCHA? That is a wrong question. If I have to write a code for CAPTCHA, then I have to write a artificial intelligence program. And it is impossible. So that is not our work. Then how you will implement CAPTCHA? How you will verify? So somebody have written it and provided it. We just inject in our project and use it. That is what the concept of service. So service means somebody already implemented, already designed. Just what you have to do, inject in your project and you can use it. You don't need to write anything. You have to just inject and use it. Some services are free, some are paid. Suppose you want to generate a barcode, for every product. Then how? It's a lengthy process. We have to take a number. We need to draw a barcode by using HTML have a concept called canvas. By using HTML canvas, we draw barcodes and we design. It's lengthy process. Then online, you will find barcode services. You can inject them. You just enter a number. For that, it will generate the barcode. That means how it is happening. So that means ready-made, everything is configured. You have to just implement it, right? For example, that is barcode, QR codes, CAPTCHAs, all these comes under the category of what? Services. Not only that, for example, suppose you have a Facebook. In order to log in into Facebook, you are using Gmail account. That means, is Facebook having all Gmail account details with them? Is Facebook having all Gmail accounts with them? No. Gmail accounts are having with Gmail people only. Then how Facebook is verifying Gmail account? Can anybody tell me what this concept called as? The concept of using somebody else credential logins in another website. Do you know any idea what that concept is called as? Actually, that concept is called as OpenID. That means sometimes they say that I want OpenID. OpenID means what? In this website, anybody can access content, but they must log in. If they have to log in, first they have to register. We are saying that no need to register. You can log in with your Gmail. You can log in with your Yahoo Mail, something. You can log in with your Outlook account. So how another website can verify the details of Gmail or Facebook? These kind of concepts are called as what? OpenID. We call these as what? We call these as services. So these are all different types of services that generally we use. For example, you see, suppose I want CAPTCHA. How? You see, there is a Google reCAPTCHA. reCAPTCHA. This is Google reCAPTCHA. It is the Google reCAPTCHA, and you can see this Google reCAPTCHA. This is Google reCAPTCHA. It says that it is a free service. It says that it is a free service that protects your site from spam and abuse. So it's a free service. What does service means? Means they designed already everything, just you use it. You just inject it into your project. That is what actually the concept of service. So technically service is a predefined business logic which you can inject and implement in any component. You can inject and implement in any component. Service enables reusability, maintainability, and testability. Actually, more technically speaking, service is a set of factories. Service is a set of factories. This word is for the people who are working in web technologies from more than 8-10 years. If anybody is working on web technologies from more than 8-10 years, for him this sentence. For others you don't need at all. Why? Because in your career you never came across with any factory. But earlier we were using factories. So technically factory is a set of functions and values. Earlier we were using factories directly in projects, but we are not using them now. We are injecting the factory into a service and we are using services. So people who are into web designing from past few years, they know only services. But people who are there from more than 10 years, 8-10 years, they know these factories. Actually, some set of values and functions are kept in a factory. The set of factories are kept in a service. Now the question is, why you don't use factory directly? That means actually, suppose we have value. We have value and we have function. Some set of values and functions, a set of value and functions, what we can do is, we can inject them, we can store them in a factory. That means we can store in a factory. So actually in your JavaScript also you have direct factories. That means you have like math factory, you have like string factory, you have like array factory. Math factory contains all math functions like round, like pi, so like random, like this. String factory contains string functions. Array factory contains array functions. All these related things are kept in a factory. Now important is, that means these factories, earlier what we were doing, we were directly using in our project. These factories we were directly using in our project. So factory we are directly using in our application. Then what is the problem is, factory uses a single call mechanism. Factory uses a single call mechanism. Single call mechanism means every time when you need a function, you need to create an object. So you want to call a function, you have to create an object. Through that object, you have to call the function. You want to call another function. If you want to call another function, you have to create another object. Through that, you have to access another function. That means for every function, every time you need an object. This mechanism is called as what? Single call. Single call mechanism. That is not great. Every time an object is initialized and through that object you are accessing a function. Every time in order to access a function you need an object. That is not good. That is not great. So that is the reason we are not using these factories directly. Why? Because factory uses single call mechanism. Factory uses single call mechanism. Single call mechanism means it uses a single call mechanism. Single call mechanism means, so single call is a design pattern where an object is created every time when when every time when a method is requested. This is called single call. We call this mechanism as single call. That is single call mechanism. So single call is a design pattern where an object is created every time when a method is requested. This is not good. That is the reason what we are doing, we are using a service. So what is advantage is service uses singleton pattern. I hope you heard about singleton. Service uses singleton pattern. What is singleton pattern? Singleton pattern is nothing but singleton creates an object for first request. Understood? And it will use the same object across requests. It uses the same object across requests. Singleton creates an object for first request and it uses the same object across. Object is created only once. This mechanism is called singleton. Service uses a singleton mechanism. That is the reason we don't use the factories directly. Then what we do? So we are going to inject these factories into what? Service. And how the services are used in our project? We don't use service directly. We don't use directly. We inject this service into which location? Into component. Understood? We inject the service into component. Component will start using it. And we will use this component in application, because Angular application is built with components. Everything you have to get by using a component. And components are getting the logic from where? Components are getting the logic from service. Services are built with factories. Factories are set of values and functions. This component is actually, this component is a template. This is a template which contains data, logic, design, everything. But lot of logic for a component is not written. It is injected through a service. So what is advantage is the same logic you need in another component. Am I right? The same logic you need in another component. Then you can just inject that service there also. We can create a reusable service and we can inject in any component and use it. That's simple. We will not rewrite everywhere. We will just reuse. That is the nature of a service. So service is not, that is the reason actually when you Google for Angular architecture, right? You will not see the architecture diagram I showed you, because I showed you a basic outline flow now in the beginning. What is that outline flow? Static DOM. DOM content loaded. After DOM content loaded, next step what happens? After the DOM content loaded, next stage. So app module, startup with the app module. After that, the component is compiled and processed, output is generated. I showed you a flow. When you Google for Angular architecture or even in Angular official website, you will not find that. as a diagram because that is internal, right? If anybody asks, tell me the Angular architecture diagram, then you will see everybody showing you this. That means the Angular diagram actually, where is it? So Angular diagram, everybody will be showing you that diagram, actual key features. Yeah. This is the basic architecture diagram. This you will see everywhere. This is the diagram you are going to see as Angular architecture. But I showed you internal flow also. Internal flow means request comes to server. Server will have a handler. Handler will have a component lifecycle. I explained. Component lifecycle I explained. Handler will use routing engine. Routing engine will take help of route table. Route table will load the component. That's all not there anywhere. Right? Nowhere on Google you will find that. Because see, these documentation somebody have to prepare for you. And whatever documentation designed in Angular, help about Angular is something designed people like you only. People like you, developers like you, they designed Angular help. That is not officially designed by Angular team. That means they prepared the help documents and they uploaded. Angular team certifies it and it will put it in their documents. That means you can prepare a good documentation about any concept and you can contribute to Angular. Right? That means they will upload your documentation if it is very good and they will give you the credit for that. They say that this article by this person in Angular community. And remember, every article about, every help about Angular concept is prepared by developers like you. In that case, they miss a lot of things inside. And they don't have a time to prepare everything in detail. That is the reason official Angular website also shows you this diagram. And in this diagram, what is there? This they call as Angular architecture diagram. In this, what is their architecture? Only 2 points are there. What are those? You see, the 2 points is we have modules, functions, means functions and all are there. They are injected into which location? Service. Service is injected into component and the component is designed into a template and component works with two mechanisms, property binding, event binding, two-way technique na. And this component is delivered to you in the page by using a directive. Directive, component directive. I told you component directive. Structural directives, component directive. Component directive means app login. Right? That is this architecture? This is just the concept. And in official website, you will find only this, nothing else. Right? That means official website is providing this, means they don't have documentation good. Actually, this Angular is better. React is very poor in documentation. React.js, they don't have a proper documentation at all. That is the reason a lot of headache for people to learn from those sources. Why? Because everything is not clear. Right? It is very difficult for anybody to learn. Because many times when people come here to learn any technology, some people say that I have 10 years experience, I have 15 years experience. See, frankly speaking, a 10-15 years experience person should never attend a class to learn a technology. He must be able to explore the technology by himself. Understood? That means a 10-15 years experience person in any technology must be capable of learning a technology by himself. From where he will get the sources, how to explore the technology, that is what his experience is. Right? Suppose a new version of Angular is coming. Just example. Anybody who is training you Angular or React, online, offline, anybody, who trained them? Who trained them? Officially, Angular team is appointing them to train you Angular. Officially, Angular team have taken a class for them and told them that this is what Angular is. Then how they are training you? That means they have to explore everything. That means we as trainers have to explore everything. What they are releasing, when they are releasing, so what new concept they are releasing. Sometimes we also may miss a small point because we need to explore everything and we need to deliver to you. Right? That means lot of work for the people who are training you the technology. That means, and it's not, they have to work very hard. Why? Because that is not very hard for seniors. Why? Because they know which information will be there. And they know the complete architecture behind it. For a person who knows architecture, for him learning a technology is very simple. A technology is very simple. That is the reason if anybody says, I have 10 years experience and still you are attending a class, not great. I'm not discouraging, just I am saying that fact. That is not great. Why? Because then what 10 years experience you have? You can't explore anything by yourself. You don't know how to learn a new concept. Then what? Sometimes people, why they join class, even they have experience, because they don't have time to explore. Because there are two types of points, right? Sometimes experienced people, 10, 15 years experienced people, they don't have time to explore because already they are very busy with their works in projects. They don't have time. Then that is the reason they join class. It's not like they can't explore. They can explore. But then why they are attending class? Because they want a slight guidance. Right? You tell 5%, they will explore rest of 95%. Do you know, you are learning so much time, right? Before COVID, actually, we used to conduct Angular weekend batches. Now we are not conducting. Weekend batches means only 2 days Angular finish. Saturday, Sunday. Saturday 5 hours, Sunday 5 hours, 10 hours Angular finish. And people from Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, and various locations fly, come here, stay for 2 days, learn and go. Not only Angular, .NET, Java, like technologies. We have weekend batches earlier. Now we are not having them, right? So now we are not conducting any weekend batches, right? But earlier we used to have 4 weekends, 5 weekends, .NET finish. 4 weekends, 5 weekends, Java finish. And 1 weekend Angular, 1 weekend React. That is it, right? That means even you try to tell all this to the person who came to weekend batch, he will say, sir, I don't want all this. Please tell the architecture, infrastructure, what it is having, how it flows, where it works. Just tell these 3 points. That's enough. The rest of things I can explore. I'm expert. I'm expert. People like team leads, project managers also used to come, right? They fly from different locations and they come. They take an appointment for the batch. They fly for 2 days. They come here, they learn and go. Actually, earlier weekend batches, that's how we have a lot of circle with project managers, project leads. They are sending us regular requirement related information that, sir, we have these requirements in our company. You visit our website. There is seshajobs.com. You know our website. This is seshajobs.com. This is our Naresh IT jobs site. This is not Naukri. So in Naukri, you will find all experience requirements. This is our official website. And in this website, you will find lot of jobs by our clients. These are the lot of jobs by our clients. Our clients, you see, these are all the jobs. .NET developer 5 hours ago, app Oracle application developer, Android developer. These are all the companies, different locations. See, Jaipur, Noida, Agra locations, different. These jobs you will not find in Naukri. These are our clients. That means these are the people who are associated with it for several years. Their project managers, the team leads came here, learn the technology, and they are still connected with us, and they post all the requirements here. Right? They post all the requirements here. They learn the technology from us. Leads, project leads, team leads, and they don't want detailed information. They just want architecture. That means that is the reason we need to be very strong in the concept of architecture at experience level. You should know where which concept flows, where which concept structs. You don't need to learn concept. Concept, anybody can learn. You just read a document, you will know the concept. Architecture, difficult. Even you Google, so for so many hours, you will find very rarely that architecture is correctly known to the people who continuously following the technology from the beginning. That means we are training Angular before Angular born. That means we are training Angular JS. Before Angular JS, we were training Knockout JS. Before Knockout JS, we were doing jQuery. That means we are from the architectural level, everything we know, what they designed. That is the reason we are capable of telling you the architecture diagram, which you will not find generally outside. Right? Outside, you will not find any architectural diagram, routing engine, route tables, handlers. These very rarely you will see such architectures, which is actually working in the background. Why we know all this? Because we saw them building this. We saw them introducing this. That means we saw without routing engine how it was working. Now after routing engine how it is working. We saw that difference. That's the reason we know the architecture behind how it works. So experienced people need to be very strong in architecture. Entire interview will be on architecture. Interviews will be on architecture, not concept. For freshers, completely concept. Right? You keep in touch of this website, you will find lot of Angular jobs also. Only Angular developers, UI Angular developers, so many jobs are posted here. Right? You can get there. So this is just outline flow. Internally, so much other things will happen. So we need a function. Function is injected to service. Service is injected to component, and component is delivered to application. That is the basic flow, how it actually works. So now, why we cannot use directly factories? Because factories use what? Single call mechanism. Service uses what? Singleton mechanism. Singleton mechanism. Single call and singleton. Right. And important is actually service uses DI mechanism. Service uses DI mechanism for implementation. Service uses singleton pattern and DI mechanism. DI is what? Dependency injection. Dependency injection. Service uses dependency injection mechanism. DI. Dependency injection is nothing but, usually dependency injection means, so actually DI comprises of two components. Dependency injection contains two components. One is provider. Another one is injector. We have two components. We have a provider and an injector. What is the purpose, I will tell you. What is provider? So provider is nothing but it is used to locate. It is used to locate a service in memory. That means services are loaded into memory. When services are loaded into memory, to locate the services in memory, we need a provider. What is the provider responsibility? It is used to locate the service in the memory. That means it is going to identify where the service is in the memory. Actually, so it looks into three levels actually. Looks into root, it looks into child, or it looks into platform. It looks into root, child, or platform. In our Angular, provider is going to look into three locations: root, child, and platform. What is difference is, root is the memory. Root is the memory allocated for project. Root is the memory allocated for project. That means if you give root provider as root, then it will look in project folder. That means it will look for service in which folder? Project folder. If it is root, right? If you mention child is memory allocated for. Child is the memory allocated for module in project. That means in a project there can be several modules. Some services are designed only for a module that cannot be accessed to other modules. In that case, if you want to look in the module level, then you have to define provider as what? Child. Provider is child level, provider is root level. Root level means it looks in a complete project folder, project memory, and it is child means it looks into module memory. So every module can have a service and every project can have services. There is another one. What is it? Platform. Platform is memory allocated for projects, allocated for, you can say, workspace. You know what is a workspace? Workspace is a collection of projects. If you are dealing with a service which is used across projects, then you have to mention the provider as platform. You have to mention the provider as platform. So provider will look in the workspace, because workspace is the location where you have multiple projects. So if you are looking for a service in a workspace, then platform. If you are looking for a service in a module, then it is child. If you are looking for a service in a project, then it is root. So you have to first mention where to look for the service. Locating the service in memory is done by whom? Provider. After it finds out, that means if it is unable to find out that, then it will show a message. So provider unable to find the service. That means if in the memory the service is not loaded and it is not present, then immediately it will say, I cannot locate. So it says that provider is unable to locate the service. If it is located, then this service need to be injected into your component. That is done by injector. What is the role of injector? It is used to inject a service into component. It is used to inject a service into component. So that is injector's responsibility. That is what actually dependency injection. Dependency is locating where it is present, and injector is injecting it into the component so that you can start using it. Right? Injector is used to inject a service into component. Right? Actually, So service is injected. Service is injected. Service is injected into the constructor, into the constructor of component, into the constructor of component. Service is injected into the constructor of component. This is important. I told you FAQs. After this service concept, pipes, services, both FAQs I will discuss separately, right? In those FAQs, some questions which are asked in interviews, I will tell you. For that, we will finish these two topics, pipes and service, then we will discuss some FAQs. In the many questions, many interviews, they actually ask this question. They will ask that, have you worked with Angular service? You will say yes. Then they will ask that, why we inject service in a constructor? So because what is the nature of service? Singleton. Singleton means what? Object is created only once. The same object will be used across number of requests, and constructor nature is executing only once. Am I right? Constructor executes only once per an object now. That means why you are injecting? To handle singleton. That means actually, so service is injected into constructor of component. So actually it uses singleton pattern. Singleton pattern. It uses singleton pattern. So if anyone asks why it is injected into constructor, that means to implement singleton. To implement singleton, we inject into the constructor so that it is created at the time of creating the component, it is injected and it is available across the component any number of times. We can access and use across any number of times. That is what actually injected. So now here, so how do we create the service? So I will say configuring a service in Angular. How to configure a service in Angular? How do we configure a service in Angular? Technically, first thing, so Angular service is a class. Angular component is a class, Angular pipe is a class, and Angular service is also a class. Angular service is a class. Now, service class comprises of methods known as service methods. Service methods. The methods inside that service class are known as service methods. A service class contains service methods. But how Angular knows that it is service? How Angular knows that it is service? Who is going to designate it as a service, right? How Angular knows that it is a pipe? By using a directive. What is the directive? Pipe directive. At the net pipe. How Angular knows it is a component? By using component directive. How Angular knows it is a service? So the directive for service is at the net injectable. The directive for service is injectable. If a class is having a marker called injectable, that means it is a service. It is a service. It is a service. That means if a class is having component, it is a component. If a class is having a pipe, then it is a pipe. If a class is having an injectable, that means it is a service, because services are injectable. It is an injectable. So how do we do that? So technically it will be like this now. What we have to do? Import first. What to import? Injectable. Injectable from Angular core library. In Angular core library, we have injectable. Now we need to use a marker at the net. What? Injectable. We have to use injectable. Here so many techniques are there, I will tell you. This is the marker. By using that marker, we can create a class now. Export class, what is name? Service name. Service name. So this is the service name. Service is a simple class, ordinary class. It don't need to implement anything. It doesn't need to implement anything. It is just an independent class because service is a independent business logic. You can put anything inside it. That means in this, what we do, we define some public, so some service method. We create some service method. What this service method will do, this service method will return some data. That service method return some data. It is going to return some data, some functionality it is going to return. So that means now this is technically a service now. How the services are configured, that is how is configured. But here one problem is there. Actually the problem in this is now where to locate this service. What is the scope of this service? What is the scope of this service? There is no scope for this service. That means this service is never loaded into memory. This service is never loaded into memory. How you mention the scope of the service? Actually every service requires a scope to be defined. So who will use this scope? Which is used by provider. Provider have to use the scope to identify this. Then we have to mention the scope. Is it project level? Is it module level? Or is it workspace level? Right? We have three scopes now. One is root, another one is child, another one is platform. We have three scopes. That generally we do by using like this, @injectable. @injectable. Here you can use a provider. In this injectable, we can use a property called provided in. We use a provider here, provided in where it can be root or it can be child or it can be platform. You can define like this. This is how injectable is defined. Or there is another technique or another way is there, or you can do one more work. Instead of doing that, what you can do is, so in app.module.ts, there will be a separate collection called providers. Have you seen that? We have declarations, we have imports, we have bootstrap, and there is a providers. Into these providers, we can inject the service name. Then application is ready to use. Which one is better? To define a provider at service level, or to define a provider at app module level? Service level is better. Why? Because if you mention at app module level, what happens? All services are loaded, even you are not using them. That is called eager loading. Eager loading. If anybody asks you how to eagerly load a service, you have to write in providers. How to lazily load a service? Then define in injectable. In FAQs, I will give you all these points. We will discuss about that, right? So what is lazy loading? Lazy loading means it is loaded only when it is requested. It is loaded only when it is requested. Eager loading means you are loading even when it is not in use. All services we can mention in providers. Why you are loading all services if they are not using all of them? That means load the service into the memory only which is used. That is what actually lazy loading, right? That is the implementation here. So let's see how this works. That means now service is ready. You have to create a class. We have to mark the class with injectable. That service class need a method. That method will return the functionality or value. And next point, the next point here is we need to make the service load into memory by using provider. Provider is going to locate that. After that, this service need to be injected now. Service is injected into any component. How the service is injected into any component? So generally we have a export class. This is component class. Am I right? In this component class, usually you will have a constructor. Am I right? Into the constructor, we define a private and a reference for that service. That means reference name colon. It is of what type? Service type. You remembered this? I told you in TypeScript. If you remembered, I told you in TypeScript why to give private. If I don't give private, what will happen? I explained. Do you remember that point? This reference is not accessible to class. It is accessible only inside constructor. Understood? That means only inside the constructor it is accessible. If you declare as a parameter in the constructor, am I right? If you declare as a parameter in the constructor, it is accessible only in that constructor, but it need to be accessible to entire class. Then what you have to do is you have to mark it with any access modifier. You can use public also, but we want only within the class. Then what we have to do? We have to mark it as private. We have to mark that as private. Otherwise it is not accessible outside. It is loaded in constructor, but must be accessible outside the constructor. That in that case, you have to configure in this way. This is how we inject. Then you can access that service method and use it, right? Let's see one example here. One simple example. Suppose we see, you see here, how do we add services and all? Let's simple example. We see here, is there any login component we designed? Yes, we have a login component. Yeah, there is a login component design. Let's go into the startup and keep it. App module. Here we have the component. What is it? Login. Login component in index. We will keep app login. Yeah, so this is app login. Fine. Let's run this and see localhost, right? So a login is there. So in this login, I want to create a CAPTCHA. Not real CAPTCHA like some random code should come. In this, we want to generate something like this. Let's go to the login component HTML, and here I will add data term verify code and data definition. Here I want to generate a random code there. I want to generate some random code there, right? Now, how do we do that? How we can handle? And I need that everywhere where I need register, login like things. Change password, login, register, anywhere I want this CAPTCHA. Then you cannot write the code for CAPTCHA everywhere. Then what you do? You create a service and you inject into any component you want. Let's create a service now. Let's go to project folder. In the project folder, in the app, I will add a new folder called services. We have pipes and we have services. In service, I am adding a new file. Add a new file, captcha.service.ts. just like pipes components in name. Okay. How you can make it as a service now? First, we have to import. What to import? Injectable from Angular core library. You have to import, and you need to mark injectable. Then we have export class and capture service. Capture service. This capture service is having a method called generate code. Generate code is the method. What this generate code method have to do is it should return a random code, some 5-6 digit random code it should return. I will use my JavaScript here. A is equal to math.random will generate a random number. Multiply by 10. Why? Because random number will be a fraction, 0.76 like that. We want a integer, right? That is why. Okay, next, similarly, I want like this A, B, C, D, and E. So how many? One more, F. So this is a 6-digit random number. I will create a code here. This code contains combination of all these 6 digits combined at one place, 6-digit number. Then I will put an expression here, A. But sometimes it will return 5.9. I want to round to the nearest. So I don't want any fractions to come. Then we will use math.round. Round A. That is 1. Okay. Space second digit. Second digit is B. Third digit is C. Fourth digit is D. And fifth digit is E. And sixth digit is F. That means this is a string. Now code is a string. You see it is a string. Code is a string type. This is an string type. Am I right? Now what we have to do is return that code. That means whenever you call generate code, it is going to return this code. Okay, your service is ready. A service is ready. Now what I have to do now, I need to use this service in login component. So let's do one thing now. So if I want to use in login component, go to the components. In the components, login component, in the TS file, here we have to import. Here we have to import. So I am configuring a constructor. Into that we need to import. We need to import. How do we import? So service to be imported from import. Import first. What is the location we have? Capture service. From services we are importing. We have a separate services folder. From there we are importing. Now into this we will inject private. What is it? Capture. Capture, and it is of what type? Capture service. Capture service. Now the interviewers will ask you a question. Why you are not creating an object for this class? Why you created a reference for this class? Generally, in order to access members of class, we need to create an object for that class. That is what the problem. If you create an object, then you have to create another object next time. Every time when you want to access, you need an object. This I want like a static memory. Understood? That means the memory allocated for the first request. In TypeScript already I showed you, static is continuous memory. I want this as a continuous memory. Continuous memory means the memory allocated for first will be used for others. Non-static is discrete memory, right? Now here, why you mentioned private? Because here I am using a simple option like this. I will declare a property, public code. Code is what type? String type. Initially it is empty. we will write on init. That means this component have to implement ng on init. On init we have to implement. Means on initialization of component. So we have to write ng on init. We have to use ng on init. Implements on init is implementing, right? So we need ng on init. So in it, we have to implement that ng on init. Fine. In this, what we have to do, we need to collect the method. See, captcha service contains a method. What is the method? It contains a method called, what is the service method we created? Generate code. We have to access that generate code and apply to this code. That means what we have to do, this dot code is equal to this dot, what is it? Captcha. Observe carefully, if this is not defined as private, if it is not defined as private, you see this captcha is not accessible because it is a parameter of constructor. It is accessible only inside the constructor. If I want to make it accessible to entire class, then you have to mark this as what? Private. Private. And here we have to define this dot captcha dot generate code. That's it. That is returning a string you stored in a string. It is returning a string and you are storing a string. That is the fine option. That means how it is going to handle. Now this code I need to display here. I have to just display that code here, right? That is the code. And you can see a random code should be generated here. Now error will be there. Error because we haven't mentioned provider. Service don't have a provider now. Let's see what is the error it is showing. Inspect. And let's go to the console. In the console, you will find, this is console. You will find the error. So you see no provider. That is what we were expecting. That means it says that your service is not having a provider. How do we configure the provider? 2 levels, right? What we have to do? You want lazy? Then here in injectable, where is the service? Yeah. Here in the injectable, you have to define provided in, and here we need to define. So we have root, you have root, you have child, or you have platform, right? Now, once it is defined root, means at project level anywhere you can access. Now it is working fine. You see there is a random code here. You see 57913, some random code is there. And I refresh the page, you will see it will get another code. I refresh the page, every time it will get a different code. So we should not refresh. We will put some button which clicks and reloads the code. Your wish, you can do that, right? But initially we'll do one more thing here. Let's remove this provided here. Remove this provided here. Okay. Now again provider problem will come. Am I right? Provider issue came here. Now tell me where is the second location for provider. So where we have to go, app module, in that providers is there. In the providers, you have to inject which service? Captcha service. Now it is injected here. Now you can see, now it is again working fine. Not required both locations. Either you give lazy or you give eager. If you write in app module, it is what? If you write in app module, it is eager. That means all services we write here. And at the time of initializing the application, it loads all of them. Why? Why you are loading them? Load only when they are required. Then that is the reason majority of situations, sometimes some services we need to get ready at the time of startup itself. We need to make them get ready at the time of startup and we will use them. In that case, we write there. Otherwise, you just write here. We have to define what is it provided in what route. We need to define that. That is how it is going to handle it. Now, here you can do the changes your wish. That is that point, like what is that in this design. Here I can put a button, and suppose you have like span. So we have class, like we have usually class have BI, and BI have some class. So arrow, something like arrow clockwise. Is there any arrow clockwise? We will see. Okay, it is there. Then I will put the class as BTN. That's enough. That looks like an ordinary refresh button. And I click on the button, then what should happen? This code should be generated. You can write what to write on click. On click is new code. Okay. New code should be generated. Let's write in login component. We will write a method. So public, we have a new code method. What is that new code method? It is an void type, right? And what it has to do, same. It should generate the code and store in that code, right? That means now when user clicks here on that, it will generate a new code and it will get some new code, it will get and display. That is just captcha. Means it is not captcha. It is just like concept we implemented here. The point here is how we can reuse the service now. Now, wherever you need captcha, only one step. What you have to do, go to that component, inject captcha, access the method, right? So you have only one step. You want captcha in another component. What you have to do, import the captcha, inject into constructor and just use wherever you want. That is only the thing. That means now we can create such so many. For example, we generally use this for handling lot of data, APIs, which are coming from another sources. What we have done, in every component we written fetch, 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 fetch. No need of doing that. You can write in a service, there you fetch the data and collect the data, inject that into every project, every component. Every time you don't need to fetch. You can do that by using service. But now important is this is actually custom service. This is actually custom service. Custom service means we created our own service and we used that service. Actually, Angular provides several predefined services. Angular have some ready-made inbuilt services which you have to learn and use them. Some services are inbuilt, just like pipes. You have built-in pipes, you have built-in services. Angular built-in services we have like, so one of the popular service you will learn here is like routing service. We have like routing service. So you have the service like form service. Actually, it is a form builder service. Huh? We have form builder service. In Angular, we can use the services like validation services. Validation service is there. So Angular have several services. You can use like cookie service, but cookie service is not inbuilt. This is third party. You have to inject and use them. Means most commonly used services in Angular. But this better I will not give this because ignore that, because just I given it third party, right? Because there is not inbuilt available. Inbuilt services we have routing services, we have form related services, we have validation services, and very popular we have a HTTP service. Actually, this is very popular, HTTP service. This HTTP service manages get post like activities for APIs. For APIs, we use this. We will see how to use these services now. That means currently what we done, we created a custom service. We created our own service. Now we will see how to use existing services we have. Existing service means we are going to first see this HTTP service. That means how to communicate with APIs, get the data from the APIs and interact with the APIs. So for that we used actually fetch, but the right way is to use HTTP service. There you will understand what is difference between a fetch and HTTP, right? We will see that. That we'll see next session. Tomorrow we'll do that. So tomorrow we are going to discuss built-in services. And for that, I will give you this one first, HTTP service, how to work with them, right? Then others, we will proceed next level by level. Okay. Tomorrow we'll continue, right?